All those years ago, it was easy. You got an infection, you went to the doctor gave you an injection, and you were better. Not so anymore, not so. And it is time for people to sit up and take notice. So I want to do a bit of educating, and I want us to learn something. So the question now is, what is epigenetics? Okay, what is epigenetics? It's the study of how your behaviors and your environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Epigenetic changes are reversible, which is the good news. And they actually do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. In other words, your body can respond by creating a disease, okay? And epigenetic modifications can contribute to alter gene expression in a heritable way without necessarily affecting the underlying genomic sequence. So what that mouthful means is that, yes, behaviors and environments can cause the way our genes work, and we can take control. We have absolute ability to take control if we know how, and if we stop, and in other words, if we pause and say, what is the effect of all these environmental and behavioral changes that have impacted our lives? What is their effect, and how can I take responsibility? Now, the biggest thing that we need to look at always, and that's how we feed ourselves, is the effect of food on us. So now I want to describe a syndrome called mast cell activation syndrome. Don't worry about the big words, do not worry. But you see, in us, we have an immune system. And part of the immune system is called the mast cells. And those cells were discovered a long time ago in 1877. And the doctor who discovered them was actually awarded a Nobel Prize in medicine. And what do? They play a role in allergy and other reactions that the body can go through. Now, how many of you know people with manifestations of allergies in different ways? Well, there are many, many, many. And Evelyn mentioned autoimmune diseases as well. Those are closely linked to manifestations of allergy. So they're important, these mast cells. They're important in the immune system for wound healing and defense against invaders, invading germs. They're found everywhere, all right? Mast cells are found in connective tissue. They're found in the skin, in the heart, in the lungs, in the liver, in joints, throughout the body. And they also contain all sorts of mediators that are important for our health. So why am I talking about mast cells? Because I'll actually explain now why I'm distressed as a medical doctor. We were trained as medical doctors to try and stop symptoms as they happen. So if there's pain, give a painkiller. If there's an infection, give an antibiotic. If there's depression, give an antidepressant, okay? And for me, for over 50 years, oh gosh, I'm giving away my age now, but for over 50 years, I had a problem with that. I've had a problem with that approach. But anyway, let's talk about mast cells. Mast cells are part of the immune system. They are there to protect us. They produce a lot of biochemical mediators, which I'm afraid we are so busy trying to stop, okay? And in so doing, we create more problems. But anyway, their role, they act as a bouncer. For example, if you're at a party or a club, a bouncer will keep out a person that isn't invited or somebody that is not welcome. Okay, so that is their role. And there are large populations that surround blood vessels, nerves, and in the lymph. And they are found in tissues, generally, which meet the outside world. We're talking about the skin, the gut, the lungs, the nose, the eyes, okay? So that's where there are a lot of. And a lot of specialties in medicine, such as dermatology, such as ophthalmology, such as gastroenterology, are busy wondering what to do about the work of the mast cells. And the reason I want us to think very carefully is that perhaps there's something going wrong with the way our mast cells are working. They're not as efficient as they should be. And that could very well be because of the nutrition and the toxins that we are being exposed to. So I like to simplify things, and I think there are two things we should ever concern ourselves about: the toxins around us and the nutrition we put inside us, okay? So once you simplify it like that, I think life becomes a bit easier. So mast cell activation might manifest as itchiness, might manifest as gastric acid secretion abnormalities. They might manifest as ulcers. Blood vessels might also respond in an abnormal way, either constrict or dilate a lot. And that could be the beginning of manifestations of hypotension, hypertension. You know, if you think carefully, all that we are talking about is what we see commonly, okay? Might be contraction in the respiratory airways, respiratory ways, and it could manifest as asthma or hay fever. So what we are talking about is a lot. But now, when we talk about the mast cell activation syndrome, we are actually talking about repeated symptoms of allergy. They happen again and again. I mentioned low blood pressure. There is severe diarrhea, difficulty in breathing. And so all those are characterized by the release of the mast cell mediators, the chemicals within the mast cells. The famous one is histamine. You might have serotonin, you might have heparin, all those that you may have heard of. Reactive oxygen species, otherwise known as free radicals, all those are released. So how does your body cope? Okay, how are you expected to cope if over and above everything else, there is the environment to deal with, such as heat or cold, stress in all forms, persistent fatigue, exercise, and then that might trigger the mast cells. Various foods and beverages, drugs, yeah? A lot of people are on a lot of drugs in response to symptoms, and they may not necessarily be very kind to the body. Some people might respond to odors, either natural or chemical, infections, sunlight, mechanical irritation, all these things. But they are part of life, right? They are what we are living in our environment. So we can't run away and hide. We need to do something about it. And perhaps that's where we are going to discuss what can be done. So one trigger of mast cells and the activation that happens are molds, okay? I want to mention it very briefly that molds are everywhere It is, especially in places which are damp, where there's a lot of darkness, where there are lots of trees. I live in Durban, I didn't tell you that. Durban, South Africa. And here we have the sea, and we also have a lot of trees, and it rains a fair amount. So mold for us is quite a problem. Now, one can either deal with it medically with all the medications and try to medicate the symptoms, or what I chose a long time ago, thanks to this opportunity, one can strengthen the immune system so that in places of exposure to whatever the body is exposed to, the body can cope. And that is why we are discussing supplementation, but I'll come to that. So molds are important, for example, in making medications, such as penicillin. It was first made because of molds. Molds can be important to ferment our foods. So they have a role. That's the point I'm trying to say. But some people whose bodies cannot handle molds, yeah? Many people are sensitive to mold, as it can trigger those mast cells and it can cause activation of the mast cells. So what are we going to do about it? I need to go on. Yeah, sorry, I jumped too far, as I said, because it's not my, let me just go to the previous. I want to, sorry. There can be so many symptoms. We've discussed it already, but these are what we see commonly. I'm sure if you look around you, you've heard of people with headaches that keep recurring, blood pressure problems, asthma-like problems, anxiety and depression, yeah? Itchy body, heart palpitation. Those are the common things that we see. And those are the manifestations. In children, I want to mention them specifically. Irritability for no apparent reason. Some children are just plain irritable. You can put a bottle in their mouth, you can put a dummy in their mouth, you can lift them up, you can do whatever. They're irritable because they are responding to their environment, and that can be quite distressing. Some women and men maybe are treated for urinary tract infection. And they go and get antibiotics and more antibiotics and more antibiotics. Just be that the mast cell activation syndrome is irritating the bladder, and it is not an infection, it is just extra irritation as a result of this syndrome. Okay, so my question is, have we become a society that is over-medicated and undernourished? I think so. I truly think that is our challenge. So I'll skip this slide because it's rather busy, but it was to explain various mediators that are released by mast cells. But for example, there might be challenges with osteoporosis. There might be challenges with clotting and bleeding problems. There might be even tumors that might happen, or excessive fatigue, but a lot can happen. All the common diseases we see. Okay, so as we think about the health of the families, we need to realize that many of these things run in families. And babies that are not breastfed seem to be more exposed to this kind of phenomenon, the allergy. And also, many people might have triggers such as emotions, okay, anger, anxiety, stress. But if their immune system is not functioning well, now we want to zero in on the immune system and how to make sure that the immune system functions well. If the immune system is not functioning well, all these things are just amplified. They are magnified in a big way. So let me just move on to our solutions that we need to do. Identifying hidden allergies would be important. This again is quite a busy slide, so let's just move on. But I want you to know that where you need to begin is to think simply that large food particles should get broken down into simpler particles or simpler compounds. Simple amino acids, fatty acids, and simple sugars. But if there is a lot of undigested food that leaks through the gut, it exposes the immune system to those food particles, and that can be a problem. And so, a lot of us are always eating, we are eating a lot of foods that might be irritating the gut. Now, let's think about modern lifestyle. People are eating chips, they're drinking all those cool drinks, the fizzy ones, they're drinking maybe alcohol, they're eating preserved foods, just as Evelyn said, okay? Now, all that creates what we call a leaky gut. And then they get onto medication just to compound it, and all those pathogens or germs, plus nutrients that are not well digested and cause sensitivity, and then antibiotics and antacids, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for the aches and pains that will occur, compound the whole system. Absolutely. So a gut that was originally healthy becomes very leaky, allowing stuff through. And it goes straight into the bloodstream. And that's how diseases are formed. So what we need to remember is that if there are things like vitamin B complex deficiency, vitamin C deficiency, mineral deficiencies such as magnesium, and all those things that are required, selenium, manganese, then we know that people with asthma have lower than normal levels of stomach acid. That's why we see asthma quite in children, but we doctors are also quite guilty of prescribing antacids for people, and we can set up a lot of situations. And then important amino acids, those are the building blocks of protein. These are essential amino acids, but sometimes they are missing in our diet. Why? Because we cook our meat, we don't often get the right combination of amino acids. We might even have just a few in one meal, a few in another meal, and the body doesn't know what to do. It doesn't then form what it is supposed to form because it hasn't been provided with everything. So we have a challenge, and now we are slowly beginning to answer the question, why supplement? And that is where we are headed for. But I just want to point out that we are increasingly seeing a problem of malnutrition manifesting as childhood obesity and chronic inflammation. And that is because, as was mentioned earlier, food has become highly processed and people are no longer doing as much physical activity as they should be. And this can also lead to underactivity of the hormones because of malnutrition and toxicity. So there is a link to exposure to toxins. All right, so I've talked about children and how they might manifest, but irritability is a big thing. A rise in temperature for a short time once they've been exposed to something that might cause a challenge. Yes, we need to go back to eating real food, because those food additives are not good, hey? They're really, really not good. So learn to read labels, or better still, buy food that doesn't have a label on it. You know, a mango shouldn't have a label. A sweet potato shouldn't have a label. Those are the kinds of foods we need to go back to, in all honesty. So what am I saying? We need to build each other up. We do belong to a business, but I want to declare right now that you don't build a business, you build people. And that's what we are in, a people business. It's then that people build the business, and that's what we. Yes, you are welcome. I want to say that there's so many companies out there that claim to have very, very good supplements. But the question now becomes, who can you trust? Who is there to be trusted? Because you see, a lot of over-the-counter supplements have been found to have things in there, hidden active ingredients that are either unsafe or unstudied. And that is scary. That is very scary. So in our company called the Neolife, essentially a family, I prefer to call it a family, we are privileged to have an advisory board that research and develop every single thing that we have. And it was founded by a top toxicologist and pharmacologist. He was, in fact, a cancer researcher who declared that cancer can be prevented, and it can be prevented by good nutrition. So he came from what he was doing as a cancer researcher to Neolife. Neolife has been going since 1958. He came across in the 70s and transformed the scientific advisory board. So they have given us the utmost pleasure and privilege to learn about cellular nutrition, because that's where they really have excelled. Everything is at a cellular level, and within the cell, there are these little things called mitochondria. There are thousands and thousands of them. Now, science has caught up in the recent few years that, in fact, that's where disease begins. It's most diseases are as a result of failure of mitochondria. So what are mitochondria? There was a little slide there. Let's just go back. Okay, mitochondria are actually where the basic life requirements, air and food, are put together. They are combined to make energy. There's a certain biochemical cycle there called the Krebs cycle. That's where energy is formed. And without their function, failure happens. We call it disease, okay? So increasing mitochondrial function is one of the most effective ways to boost cellular energy and therefore enhance efficiency of every single biochemical reaction and cellular process in the body. This goes as far as saying that it can potentially slow down the aging process. Now, that is what Neolife has been so good at for all these years, by giving us amazing products that we want to talk about. But for the guests, I just want to quickly go through what we are supposed to be doing. This is our wellness pyramid or triangle. The base of it should be physical activity. And at the apex should be very little fats and sugars. And in between, we're supposed to eat whole grains. But the bad news is, finding whole grains is next to impossible, because food processing began to happen many, many years ago in order to feed large populations in cities. And these populations moved from farmland to cities because of the industries that were being developed. So people left good food behind and moved to cities. And in order to be fed, food processing had to happen. And so the first thing that they remove are the oils from the grain. And the net result is that we are eating a lot of junk fats these days. We are hardly doing any physical activity. And in between there, our vegetables and protein, as Evelyn mentioned, either they are picked prematurely or they're kept in storage, and the growing process involves a lot of chemicals. So we are always being exposed and undernourished as a result, because the net result is that instead of remaining energetic, we quickly slide down into the tired zone, and then we become sick and become maintained on chronic medications, which is not ideal, because we lose out on so much of our lives. We might have quantity of life, we can live a long time, but the quality is not as it should be. Now, we need to make our families healthy by improving the quality of their lives as well. So we spend 20 to 50 years, I think from teenage years and for a long time, living in the tired and sick zone. That is pathetic. That is not good for any society, and we can change that. So ideally, we should be having more and more healthy cells. And as I explained at the beginning, epigenetics and nutrigenomics have shown that yes, you can change something. You can absolutely change something. You're not stuck in one place. And when you are labeled with a diagnosis, or when a loved one is labeled with a diagnosis, it is not cast in stone. Hey? I'm very, very passionate about this. So what do you begin with? Begin with feeding your cells. And we have this amazing product called TreeNN. It was the first product that started off Neolife as a company and as a family. And what it does, it enhances energy of the cells, and it also improves the utilization of other nutrients, all the nutrients. The efficiency of utilization is markedly increased. So we have what we call core nutrition. It's essentially amino acids, all the 22 amino acids. This is the only company that will give you all the 22 amino acids, as well as vitamins and minerals in these products that we call the Neolife Shake. And then we have Pro Vitality, which looks like that, okay? And notice inside Pro Vitality, we have that TreeNN, the product that we call the foundational product. And then we have fish oil. Evelyn mentioned the importance of fish. Well, omega-3 is so important in controlling inflammation. And I did a bit of education on mast cell activation syndromes. That is purely inflammatory. It's a response to inflammation. And then we have antioxidants from fruits and vegetables. We are supposed to eat lots and lots and lots of fruits and vegetables. Nobody has the time. And worse still, if you try to just eat lots of them, you need to stay home, eat them, and pay through your nose, pay a lot of money to get those fruits and vegetables. Well, the shortcut is to eat as well as you can, but also to supplement. And that's what we are showing you here. I feel that we should never forget our children. We must start early. There is no better time to prevent chronic diseases than during childhood. A lot of adults imagine that their blood pressure problems start when they are adult. No, the foundation for that blood pressure or diabetes or depression or whatever disease it is actually laid early in life, and they just grow up with those conditions. So Neolife has an emphasis on children. They have children's nutrition, and I'm just showing you pictures that would be important to consider for our children. Then we have the concept of nutrient synergy. It's important to know that our whole food nutrients are whole food for the reason that they work together. They're not isolates, okay? And so, for example, vitamin C works very well with flavonoids. You can do just the vitamin C until you can afford the flavonoid complex. But as you will learn, we have a business opportunity that will earn you lots of money. And as you earn the money, my recommendation and advice is that use the products. Whatever we have, use them, okay? It's pointless trying to save the money and hoping that you somehow be let off the hook. No. And that's why I'm saying, don't wait to take responsibility. Use a product that will make sure that your blood sugar control is healthy, because too much blood sugar running through your veins and arteries is damaging. It's like it is corrosive to those blood vessels. So use these products. We've talked about mitochondria. We have coenzyme Q10. Just to know, coenzyme Q10 is made by our cells, okay? But it begins to decline to such an extent that between the ages of 30 to 50 years old, drops to about 50% production. And that is why we need to supplement. And I'm answering the reason why we need to supplement. Another example is vitamin B complex, okay? Vitamin B, just like vitamin C, are water soluble. They are not retained in the fatty tissues. So if you're not getting enough of it, diseases will begin to creep in due to deficiency, okay? And I put this mom breastfeeding because she has to supply herself with enough to be able to give the baby that is being breastfed. Start early. Don't wait to take responsibility. Why supplement? That is the question that we are answering. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about inflammation again, and to point out that toxins around your house can be inflaming, and they will drain your immune system and can trigger that syndrome that I described at the beginning, the mast cell activation syndrome. So that's why I was looking, because my children were manifesting hay fever, eczema, irritability. At the time I had two, I later had a third one. And I just thought to myself, perhaps it is me that is going to those shops and buying stuff. I really did not like what I was buying. So when I found these products, I've told you my story, I just changed everything, and I've never looked back. And I won't hesitate to share them, because now when I go, for example, to visit or to stay at a bed and breakfast or a hotel, if they're not using our laundry compound, which in many cases they don't, I wake up next morning with a headache. Why? Because my body has been so used to not being exposed to that kind of toxin that it tells me immediately that I've been exposed. And that's a good point to get to. I'm not sad about it. But you see, most people's bodies are not sensitive. Why? Because of constant exposure to things like washing powder. We have the most magnificent washing powder. It does not have phthalates. It does not have obesogens. It does not have tartrazine. It does not have PCB. All those are examples of chemicals that can cause a lot of problems. It does not have any hormone disrupting chemicals. It does not even have antibiotic-like chemicals that can leave a lot of challenges to your health. Then we have detox programs. But in summary, I want you to know that it's a complex challenge. Yours is to say, what can I do about it? Okay, what am I going to do about this problem? Because we all have exposures. It depends on how strong your immune system is at managing, for example, the release of those chemicals that I talked about. So we have what we call a bucket, and that bucket can be made bigger by you, yourself, by taking responsibility and making sure that you manage what you can manage. And we have the tools in our company, our family, to do all that. So I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you very much. Let's hope that we have a bit of time for questions and answers. I'm trying to stop sharing. Oh gosh.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that really information, which has, I think everyone have had. We are living in this world